Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. On Tuesday, the Union Cabinet approved over 3,900 crore rupees for a National Population Register or NPR. This decision comes at a time when people across the country have been protesting against the Citizenship Amendment Act or CAA and the proposed All India National Register of Citizens or NRC. Now, the NPR is being seen as the first step to the NRC, but the government is trying to de-link the two. In this episode, we will look at what exactly is the NPR, how it is linked to the NRC, and the concerns that it raises. Deeptiman Tiwari, who reports on government agencies and corruption for the Indian Express, joins us to talk about it. So, Deeptiman, what exactly is NPR and what is its purpose and how did it originate?
The National Population Register is basically a register of all the usual residents of the country. Usual residents mean such people who have been living in this country for the past 6 months or intend to live in the country for the next 6 months. So basically, this is just a record of who all is currently residing in the country. And it is not a citizenship enumeration drive or register. It only records who all are living in the country and what are their demographic details and socioeconomic details. That's all. Basically, this data is collected through the house to house survey, which is done during the census. And basically, it records basically how many people are staying in a house and what they're doing. That's all. See, this entire project was actually launched by the UPA government in 2009. And the first NPR exercise was carried out in 2010. That time, P. Chidambaram was the Home Minister. The idea was first mooted by the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, which framed the 2003 rules of the Citizenship Act. And it is in that act that both NPR and NRC are actually talked about.
If you already have the census, which takes a range of details from the citizens and counts how many citizens there are apart from other details, why do you need the NPR?
Okay, now there are two ways to understand this. One, the government says that NPR is a far more diverse data, so it collects a lot more data points on individuals living in the country than the census does. And so it is beneficial for targeting of central schemes and also for policy formulation depending upon the socioeconomic and other data which is collected during the NPR. However, it must be understood that how did the idea of NPR actually originate in the first place? And for that, we need to go back to the Citizenship Act. One, the Citizenship Act rules were framed in 2003. And there, the idea of population register has been mentioned in the sections and subsections of the rule book, where NPR is actually a precursor to conduct of National Register of Citizens exercise. It is enshrined in the law. But we must remember that it is not necessary that after NPR exercise, the law does not mandate that you must always follow it with an NRC. It only says that the National Population Register database can be used for NRC, where what you do is after you have collected data on the usual residents of the country, you can go about verifying the data that you have collected for the NRC exercise and then remove doubtful people. That's basically what the entire NPR is actually about. Meanwhile, the data which is collected is going to be used for policy formulation.
Right. So NPR, the government is saying, is used for policy implementation. But at the same time, in the Citizenship Act, you also have a section that says that the data that you collected for policy implementation can also be used to implement the NRC, which is essentially to identify illegal immigrants.
True. Actually, the very idea of NPR is actually a product of the exercise to implement NRC across the country. If you read the Citizenship Act, it says that the country must have a national register of citizens. To prepare that national register of citizens, you need to have a population register. Once this register is made, then authorities can go about verifying as to who all are actual citizens of the country and who all are not. So in the NPR exercise, if a foreigner is living in the country, then even his details are recorded by the NPR. It merely takes his passport details, where is he from, and other details, and mentions it. When an NRC exercise starts, then it says that, okay, this person is not a citizen of the country, or this person has no way to prove that he is a citizen of the country. And then other actions against that person follow under the Foreigners Act, which also entails that person being detained in detention camps, as we have seen in Assam, and some detention camps being built in Maharashtra and Karnataka.
And so this is what a lot of people are worried about, that a countrywide NRC will be implemented. Everyone's citizenship will come under question. You will have to prove that you or your ancestors were in India before a set date. And if you can't prove that, then you may no longer be a citizen. And so the fear is that the NPR will follow the NRC since they are connected this way.
Now, see, there are two things which we need to understand about NRC. NRC is controversial for two reasons. One, because the entire exercise is based on documentation. In a country where documentation is extremely scarce, to conduct a citizenship ascertaining exercise based on legacy documents is a very, very difficult process and is bound to leave a lot of genuine citizens out of the register. Two, NRC in the present context has become controversial because of CAA, the Citizenship Amendment Act. If you look at it, and even the recent example in Assam, NRC is actually religion agnostic. It does not discriminate between Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Jains, Parsis. Anyone who cannot prove their citizenship will be out. So it is religion agnostic. What has happened with the CAA is that now Hindus, Sikhs, Christians, Parsis, if they are left out in the NRC exercise, they can go and claim that fine, we are illegal Bangladeshi immigrants or Pakistan immigrants or Afghanistan immigrants, and they may be granted citizenship. Only the Muslims will be left out. That is why this entire exercise has gotten into a massive controversy, which has begun to question the very idea of India as enshrined in the Constitution. Now, what Amit Shah has been saying is that NPR is not associated with NRC in any manner, and that NPR data will never be used for NRC in future.
कृपया मैं लोगों को भी विनती करता हूं, देश की जनता को भी विनंती करता हूं कि आप ऐसे बहकावे में मत आइए कि एनआरसी और एनपीआर एक एक्सरसाइज है। एनपीआर की एक्सरसाइज का या जनगणना का एनआरसी के साथ कोई लेन देन नहीं है, दूर दूर तक नहीं है, ना इसके डेटा का एनआरसी के लिए उपयोग होने वाला है।
Now this is very, very contradictory because 9 times the government has told Parliament, not a media statement, not a press conference, but the Parliament, which is any statement made there is sacrosanct. 9 times the government has said that NRC is the, within quotes I say, logical conclusion of NPR. Logical conclusion of NPR, and that after NPR exercise, NRC will be carried out. It is a matter of record. Anyone can go to the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha website and check it. So it is very strange that the government is now claiming that NPR data will not be used. And the Home Minister, mind you, has also told ANI in the interview that NRC and NPR are based on different laws, which is incorrect. It is not true. They are both based on Citizenship Act. They both derived from citizenship rules, and they both are enshrined under the same sections. In fact, NPR is talked about within the Act when NRC is talked about. And it is very well enshrined in the law that NRC will follow NPR. So perhaps the government wants to douse the fire which is right now engulfed the country due to the protests in NRC plus CAA. Government does not want that another flashpoint around NPR is created. As we have seen, 2 states have already said that will not implement NPR.
And because of these protests, we've also seen the present government backing out and distancing itself from the NRC itself. We saw Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Sunday remarking that there has been no talk of NRC in the government, which we've seen is not the case because Amit Shah himself has mentioned it several times during different rallies.
मेरी सरकार आने के बाद 2014 से आज तक मैं 130 करोड़ देशवासियों को कहना चाहता हूं, कहीं पर भी एनआरसी शब्द पर कोई चर्चा नहीं हुई, कोई बात नहीं हुई.
Technically, both the PM and Amit Shah are correct. Because when you say that there has been no talk of NRC within the government, it means when you say something like that, it means that a file to implement NRC has not moved, which is correct. It has not moved. But the number of times the government has said both in and outside parliament that NRC will be conducted across the country, especially Home Minister Amit Shah. And it must be remembered the way he has spoken about it. He has said repeatedly, please understand the chronology. Please understand the chronology. First, the CAA will come. It will grant citizenship to Hindus, Sikhs, Parsis, Christians, Jains. And then the NRC will come and it will push out all illegal immigrants. Repeatedly, he has said, even in political rallies in West Bengal, he has said that no Hindus need to be worried because CAA is coming. And that is why there is a nationwide anxiety over NRC.
पहले सीए भी होगा, सिटीजनशिप अमेंडमेंट बिल आएगा, सारे रिफ्यूजी को, सारे शरणार्थियों को नागरिकता दिया जाएगा, उसके बाद में एनआरसी बनेगा. इसलिए जो शरणार्थी है उसको चिंता करने की जरूरत नहीं है, घुसपैठियों को जरूर चिंता करने की जरूरत है. आप क्रोनोलॉजी समझ लीजिए, पहले सीए भी आने जा रहा है, सीए भी आने के बाद एनआरसी आएगा और एनआरसी सिर्फ बंगाल के लिए नहीं आएगा, पूरे देश के लिए आएगा.
You mentioned earlier that governments of Kerala and West Bengal have already announced that they will not implement NPR in their state. But NPR is mandatory. So considering that is the case, will these statements, will these stands have any bearing?
Look, legally, they cannot do anything because citizenship is a matter under the union list. The states have no jurisdiction over citizenship. They cannot decide who is a citizen, who is not. But the infrastructure for an NRC exercise or NPR exercise is actually going to be drawn from the states. Who does the enumeration? It's the government school teachers who go and do the enumeration. Government school teachers are basically state government schools, primary schools. So if the state decides that we are not going to send any of our government employees for this enumeration, this census, then it is going to be very difficult for the central government to find people to put on the ground. And it will have to go for a massive exercise. So it will be a huge logistical headache for the government. But if the center wants to push through, it will have a showdown with the state. But it will be able to push through with something like this unless it does not get cooperation from the people.
Could you also talk a bit about what kind of information are people required to give under the NPR?
See, there are 20 different categories of demographic details which the NPR is asking from people. And some of the controversial, largely it is name, date of birth, residence, occupation, education, all of these kinds which are also done under the household census. But some of the controversial bits which are being asked in the NPR exercise are include place of birth of parents. So date of birth and place of birth of parents is a slightly controversial part. Then there are sundry details like Aadhaar number, voter ID number, driving license number, PAN card number. So all of these are personal details which are not exactly directly associated with policy formulation and raise questions of privacy basically as does Aadhaar. That is another issue with NPR where questions of privacy may be raised against the entire exercise.
So, considering it is facing opposition from various state governments, it is raising privacy concerns, and obviously we have a large number of people, just regular citizens, expressing anger and fear about it. Where does it leave us?
See, if the government actually wants to conduct NPR exercise and with the intentions that is stated, that is for policy formulation and for better targeting of central schemes, then it really needs to alleviate the anxiety that the entire nation is facing vis-a-vis NPR and NRC. I'm sure the government understands this and it has been making efforts. Amit Shah and other people are also making statements which are trying to alleviate some of the anxieties. Because even if you're able to put in place logistics on the ground without the help of the state governments, you will not be able to conduct a national population register exercise without the cooperation of the people. Remember, in the NPR exercise, the disclosure of information is voluntary, while participating in the exercise is mandatory. What details I want to share is entirely up to me. If I don't want to share my Aadhaar number, I will not share it. If I don't want to share my driving license number, I will not share it. Under normal circumstances, people would have no problem sharing these. As we have seen, there has been a pilot project earlier in some 1,200 villages across the country, and people have freely given information to RGI people, the Registrar General of India census people. But now with the entire debate over NRC and CAA, and in that backdrop, when NPR exercise is conducted, there is going to be so much of anxiety among people that people will not share information. So the entire exercise will become counterproductive. So government will have to work on it. We'll have to work with the states. We'll have to alleviate anxieties. We'll have to communicate with states and the people to convince that this is not going to be followed by a nationwide NRC, that no nationwide NRC will happen, or whatever happens will not exclude a certain section of the society, or will not inconvenience people inordinately. So government will have to find a way to communicate with the nation.
You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show, as always, was edited and mixed by our producer, Joshua Thomas. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.